Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's really defining summer 2025 for millions across the U.S. This unprecedented, sometimes bewildering, extreme weather.
Yeah, it's really noticeable.
It is. We're not just talking about another hot summer. We're seeing record heat waves just baking cities for weeks on end, wildfires igniting way too early, months ahead of schedule,
Uh-huh.
power grids buckling under the strain, and you can just feel this shift, this rising anxiety about what's happening to our climate.
It's palpable.
Exactly. So our mission here is to really extract the key insights from our sources, help you understand the why behind this weird weather, what it suggests about what's coming next, and basically equip you with an informed perspective that cuts through all the noise.
Absolutely. And it's important to say these aren't just isolated incidents, or bad luck. We are witnessing these profound interconnected shifts. They're touching every aspect of life, really. Infrastructure, mental well-being, you name it. So we'll connect the science to the real societal impacts and, importantly, look at the proactive paths forward.
Good.
The goal is for you to walk away not just knowing what's happening, but really getting why it matters and what actions are starting to emerge.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. We all know it's hot, but what makes 2025's heat feel so uniquely intense? So concerning. We've got places like New York, D.C., Boston cities that usually have, distinct seasons grappling with week after week over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Sustained heat, yeah.
And it's not just the number. It's that horrible suffocating humidity that makes being outside almost impossible, genuinely dangerous.
Right. It changes everything.
And what I found really striking in the sources was the immediate strain this puts on everything. Power grids running on fumes, hospitals reporting a huge surge in heat emergencies. It's a public health crisis unfolding right there.
It really is.
And then out west, it's not just a bad fire season, it started a full month early. That shift is, well, it's unsettling, makes you ask. Why does this year feel so much more extreme? So relentless?
That really is the core question, isn't it? And what's happening, it isn't just an amplification of past trends. It feels like a convergence of factors, creating this really novel experience of extreme weather.
Okay.
What's fascinating, scientifically speaking, is how the consensus points to these events being a direct result of, yes, long-term warming, but combined with specific environmental triggers playing out right now.
Triggers? Like what?
Well, we've kind of identified 4 key elements really driving the strange U.S. weather this year. First, hotter oceans, just significantly warmer.
Okay. How does that play out?
Think of them like giant warm bathtubs, just pumping more moisture into the atmosphere. And that translates directly into that brutal, suffocating humidity you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's what makes 95 degrees feel like 110.
Right.
Second, we're seeing increasingly erratic jet streams, those fast air currents high up.
Yeah, they steer our weather systems.
Exactly. But they're not just shifting. They're getting kind of stuck, creating these atmospheric blocks.
Stuck.
Yeah, so extreme highs, or lows for that matter, just linger stubbornly over regions for weeks, locking in that heat, or sometimes intense cold.
So it's not just a bad day, it's a bad month because the pattern won't move.
Precisely. Then third, you've got urban heat islands. This is often overlooked, but it's crucial, especially if you live in a city.
How so?
Well, cities themselves, all the concrete, the asphalt, lack of trees, they act like massive heat traps. They soak up the sun's radiation all day and then slowly release it at night.
Okay,
Which leads directly to our fourth point. Fewer cool nights. And this is really the silent pillar in many heat waves.
Fewer cool nights.
Yeah, take Phoenix, Arizona. We saw reports where nighttime temperatures barely dropped below 90 Fahrenheit.
90 at night. Wow.
Exactly. Without that overnight recovery period, the human body, especially for older adults or people with health conditions, never gets a chance to cool down. The danger isn't just the peak daytime high, it's the relentless cumulative stress.
Okay, that makes sense. When you connect those dots, the warmer oceans making the air feel thick and soupy, the jet stream locking the heat in place, our cities literally baking themselves, and then no relief overnight. Suddenly, that feeling that the weather is just fundamentally different isn't just a hunch anymore, it's a tangible reality explained by the science. It really clarifies why this year feels so pervasive, so exhausting.
It does, and that raw power of the heat and dryness, it isn't just felt in the cities, it's also unleashing this devastating new phase of wildfires.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The acceleration across the western U.S. is pretty alarming. Reviewing the notes, the scale really jumped out. Millions of acres already burned, California, Nevada, Oregon, and we're technically still early in the season.
It's staggering. And it truly is a multifaceted crisis. Wildfires are getting worse, yes, because of hotter, drier conditions, but that's not the whole story.
What else is feeding into it?
Well, we're also dealing with the legacy of decades of, let's say, poor land management practices, which allowed all this fuel-dead trees undergrowth to build up. Forests become tinderboxes.
Right.
Add to that shrinking snowpack in the mountains, faster snowmelt.
Yeah.
That means less water available later in the summer to keep things moist.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the human element, the expansion of suburbs right into those wildland-urban interface zones.
Putting homes directly in the path.
Exactly. More homes, more lives at risk. The consequences are just dire. Entire neighborhoods evacuated, families losing everything. And here's an alarming development we're seeing. Some insurance companies are actually pulling out of these fire-prone areas.
Really? So people can't get coverage?
In some cases, yeah. Or the costs become prohibitive, leaves homeowners incredibly vulnerable, and fundamentally changes how people can live in these regions. And it creates this vicious cycle, too. Fires lead to smoke. Smoke leads to pollution. Worsened air quality spreads for hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles.
Affecting people far from the flame.
Absolutely. Causing respiratory problems, other health issues for huge numbers of people. It's all interconnected.
So as we're grappling with these fires, this intense climate, it really begs the question, how well are we equipped to even understand and respond, especially when some key information resources seem to be changing? It was quite surprising to learn that earlier this year, several federal climate databases were actually taken offline.
Yeah, that raised some eyebrows.
And then the defunding of the American Climate Corps, that Youth Climate Jobs program, and even NOAA's Climate Dashboard, a key public source, was simplified, showing fewer long-term projections now. It feels a bit like dimming the lights just as the storm hits.
It really does raise an important question for anyone tracking this. What is the rationale behind removing or simplifying crucial data during a growing climate crisis?
Right? Why now?
Well, some might argue it's about, resource reallocation or maybe streamlining. But critics across the board see these actions as significantly weakening our national ability to respond to climate threats.
Understandably.
The public concern is definitely there. Why lose access to data precisely when we need it most for smart decisions? The impact of lacking accurate, comprehensive information is, well, it's profound.
How so?
Think about city planners trying to build resilient infrastructure, disaster response teams needing precise forecasts, farmers making planting decisions, even insurance markets trying to assess risk accurately.
All depend on that data.
Totally. If that foundational data is obscured or removed, it just introduces huge uncertainty. The principle is simple. Knowledge is power. And we need more of it, not less, especially facing challenges this complex and fast-moving.
So resilience isn't just about building stronger walls, it's about having the best information.
Exactly. It's profoundly dependent on accessible, robust information.
And beyond the physical impacts, the infrastructure, the data, this ongoing crisis is clearly having deep social and mental effects, too. We're seeing this growing phenomenon people are calling eco-anxiety, particularly among younger people. It's a sense that Americans are just feeling genuinely overwhelmed by the scale, the relentlessness of what's happening.
Yeah, eco-anxiety, it's essentially a chronic fear of climate catastrophe, and it's definitely gaining recognition as a legitimate mental health concern. The statistics are quite compelling, frankly worrying.
Like what?
Well, studies showing over 60% of Gen Z in the U.S. reporting feeling helpless about the climate. Many express what's being called climate grief, this profound sadness over environmental loss, over perceived irreversible changes.
That's heavy.
It is. And we're also seeing individuals having panic attacks during extreme weather events. That speaks to the immediate psychological hit. But it's vital we broaden this discussion beyond just mental health labels. Climate change is undeniably a public health issue in its entirety. The sustained stress from these impacts, it's linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, sleep disorders, even increases in domestic conflict, school absenteeism.
Wow, okay.
Families struggle to cope with these environmental disruptions. The crucial insight here, I think, is that we have to start treating climate change as more than just a weather problem or an environmental issue. It's fundamentally a people problem.
Affecting our health, our relationships, our whole society.
Precisely. Our societal well-being.
But amidst all these pretty significant challenges, it's not all grim, right? While maybe federal leadership in some areas seems to be wavering, there's a really encouraging counter-narrative emerging.
There is.
Some states, some cities are stepping up, taking surprisingly bold action. It's actually a vital glimmer of hope in all this.
Absolutely. And this is where the story gets really interesting, I think. We're seeing powerful examples of bottom-up initiatives taking root. Well, California, for instance. They've implemented new heat emergency protocols, basically treating extreme heat with the same urgency as other natural disasters. Coordinated
Makes
responses.
sense.
New York has significantly expanded incentives for rooftop solar, really trying to accelerate that clean energy transition at the household level.
Oh, okay.
Cities like Austin, Texas, they're not just talking about urban heat islands, they're actively testing innovative urban cooling zones, using things like reflective pavements, strategically planting more trees, creating cool public spaces.
Practicals.
Very practical. And Florida, facing rising seas and intense hurricanes, has mandated updated building codes specifically for hurricane zones, trying to make structures more resilient from the ground up.
So local governments aren't waiting around.
Not at all. They're passing these comprehensive climate resilience plans. They're focused on practical, on-the-ground solutions. We're talking shade trees, advanced flood control, public health campaigns about heat risks, ensuring access to greener housing. This is what climate action really looks like in 2025. It's pragmatic, it's community-driven, it's often local first.
So putting this all together, what does it mean for us personally? Because it's easy for climate change to just feel overwhelming, like a problem too big for any one person to tackle.
It definitely can feel that way.
But what we've just heard, especially about those local efforts, it's a powerful reminder that individual action, community action, it's not just possible, it's actually vital.
That is the key takeaway, I believe. While the scale of the challenge is immense, there are actionable steps, things that contribute to our collective resilience.
Like what specifically?
Well, consider practical things, like consciously trying to use less energy during those peak heat hours.
Okay.
That lightens the load on the grid when it's most stressed, especially with those urban heat islands cooking.
Simple, but makes a difference collectively.
Exactly. Supporting climate literacy in schools that equips future generations. Voting for policies that prioritize investment in clean, resilient infrastructure that drives systemic change.
Right.
And on a deeply human level, it's about community. Actively checking in on vulnerable neighbors during heat waves, making sure they have access to cooling, or even just a glass of water and someone checking on them.
Looking out for each other.
Yes. Shifting our focus a bit maybe to community resilience, not just carbon footprints. Recognizing that our collective well-being is the foundation. The U.S. climate might be changing fast,
But so can we.
but so can we. Our collective response, our ability to adapt, that can change fast too.
That's really the shortcut to being truly well-informed, isn't it? Understanding these complex, interconnected issues, it lets us navigate the present with more clarity and maybe anticipate the future, not just with dread, but with some informed purpose.
Well said.
We really hope this deep dive has helped you connect those dots in maybe a new way, and we just encourage you to stay curious, stay thoughtful about this dynamic world around us.
And maybe as you reflect on what we've discussed, consider this final thought. The future of our communities isn't only defined by the weather patterns themselves. It's shaped just as much by our collective understanding of the science, the transparency of information, and the strength of our community bonds as we respond to these changes together. The resilience we build, it's as much about knowledge and connection as it is about concrete and steel.
Powerful thought to end on. Stay aware, stay informed, and stay cool out there, literally.